pruning techniques. So, you know, when you get into...
Give us tips about, how long are they staked? Like the rest of their lives?
No. Generally you would stake for the first year. On something like this, so much of this on trees that you buy as 2-year-olds, if it didn't occur in the nursery when they were 1-year-old, it's a little after the fact. So we're going to be trying to get this back to where ideally it would have been trained to grow to at this point. There's different methods you can do on stone fruits. The one I'm most familiar with, and by stone fruits I mean peaches, pears, plums, all the things that have one big pit in the middle. It's about sunlight and weight distribution. So most of these are pruned to kind of an open center or vase shape. Think wine glass. I tried to call you a minute ago and your phone number didn't work. We need to talk pots. Do what?
I keep hearing that.
Okay. Anyway, what we're going to try and do with these things is develop 4 or 5 branches that come off the trunk at different spots, and we're going to try and create a goblet. We want to open up the whole center so that lets light into the plant, and then your fruit will occur on the branches around those. This one's going to be tough because we're either going to take out all of the tree, or most of the tree, or we're going to say whatever and we'll take out like this portion that doesn't give me a good branch over there. You also want to avoid, anytime you're doing these structural pruning things, the wider, you want the branches wider spaced. Everybody's familiar with the whole Bradford pear issue, and if you've got a bunch of branches that come off at one point, that's a very weak point in the trunk, and storms and things will just split that tree to shreds. So on something like, ideally even these could be a little more spaced, but that's not terrible. All of this dead stuff can come out. I need to really oil these pruning shears. But all the dead stuff, and when you're pruning, you want to use the sharper edge on little dead stuff. It doesn't matter so much, but the blade needs to be next to the trunk. That'll cut flush. If you've got this in the way, that gives you a little stub. But these are probably too close together, so we can take that one out. And this is what's a little problematic on this tree, because it's not really balanced. We don't have anything coming off in this direction. We can do this one, or we could probably cheat a little bit, head that back, and let this develop over time into the next scaffold branch. But ideally, you want a few inches between each branch so there's not this cluster of things coming off. And this goblet shape we're trying to develop, all those branches should probably attach in about an 18-inch area so that they're randomly scattered. They should. You want to get down to probably 4 or 5 good branches. Ideally, you'd want them coming off at a fairly obtuse angle like this without being too horizontal. When you get too horizontal, it causes a lot of suckers to shoot up from the top of the branch. Ideally, you're looking for something between 45 and 60, and you're just trying to open that up. So again, this one is difficult just because it didn't get pruning at an earlier age. You also don't want one branch coming out directly over another. So this is cheating, but we could probably, well, that's going to be over that one, so we're probably just going to take that whole thing out. But we really don't have, here's a decent branch, here's a decent branch. We're going to try and train this one over time, then that one has to go. And that kind of leaves us in a weird spot. We've got 3 in a line here, so that one will have to come out. And we still haven't opened up the center. So this is not the best situation, but, and we'll talk about spacers in a minute too, because you can do some things to kind of control the growth. But we haven't opened up the center of this plant, so I would be inclined to take it to here, but we don't have any branches coming in this direction. So you could, over time, take it all the way back to here just to leave you guys some tree. I'm probably going to take it out here and then take off all this little stuff. You don't want stuff on this pruning method. You don't want stuff growing back to the inside. And then with this method, we don't have a central leader or a growing point per se. All of these things kind of become equally dominant. So you don't want the top one to become too dominant. Just to balance this out, I'd probably go ahead and take this back to here, and that's going to give us a branch coming in this direction. We've got one there, and actually that's not terrible. They're kind of widely spaced. This is a little wide. Ideally, if we could have had these a little bit closer, but I'm not sure that I wouldn't take that one out too, just to open it up a little bit more.
Wow.
And then on all these, anytime you prune, you're just going to tip them back.
Oh, yeah?
And tipping back will control, here's a good example of something that we need to not have. You see this branch angle, how tight that is? That's going to be prone to splitting. So I'm going to select the straighter one of the two and take that out. So it's not perfect, but you can see sort of the beginning. This is a little confusing about the goblet shape because we've got so much trunk in here, but you've got essentially 4 or 5 good scaffold branches. Ideally, these could be a little bit wider, but that's fairly good. It's not going to split. Most of these are fairly broad, so they're not going to, once they get weight on them, they won't peel down and split.
And what
do you
about
guys want?
tipping off? You were saying that.
Oh, you can use this to control growth. Anytime you take the growing point out, you're going to encourage the branches below that to develop. So you want to try and keep your scaffold branches relatively even. So if you have a really vigorous one out in one direction that's far bigger than the others, you want to cut that back fairly hard. You want to keep them kind of in line. If you've got a weak one like this, you either don't tip it or you would just barely tip it. But since this one's so far behind the others, we're going to let that go ahead and grow. All these others are going to get the growing point removed. So that's going to cause branching, and that one's a little weak, so we're going to let it come on out.